Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Vitalogy Podcast. Ryan.
Josh, here we are.
Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too.
Good to
I like
see
your
you.
shirt today.
Thank you. I know we this episode brought to you by maple syrup again.
Syrup. we need to be in our log cabin room.
I know there was a box of log cabin that sat here for a while.
It was.
So that's an old joke because
that's from the COVID day. The implication would be we're out of those. Yeah. That was
it was early.
That was early on.
It was maybe episode 2 or something like that. And there was a background that we had.
Don't you mean we were in a different?
We were in
a log cabin.
So we have had requests, and we have had people ask, "What room are we in the church?" And is it time to reveal the secret a little bit? Well, here's the room we're in.
It's the nursery.
This is the nursery. You can see behind this, it's pink walls. There's pink stickers still.
Changing table.
Although changing table. Yes. So this is all just smoke and mirrors. I mean, there's nothing real about this entire experience.
The theology is real.
Oh,
Josh.
There we go. Okay. So sorry to break anybody's dreams of having a room with a brick wall. We don't have.
But the encouraging thing is, you too could turn your nursery into a podcast studio.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, okay. Once there was one we had that was all wood, and we show up both in flannels, and somebody, it was Danielle Winter. That's right. It was Danielle Winter. She, if you're out there, thank you, Danielle. She says you guys look like a bunch of lumberjacks. And it's one of those moments where we saw the comments come up on the feed.
Yep.
And but we kind of ignored it for a little while, as long as we could. We were like in the middle of a good conversation, but then it was just too much. We just lost it.
It was way too much.
It was too perfect, because then she started making comments about the
funny. That was hilarious.
Log cabin. Anyway.
Yep.
Oh goodness. Okay. Reliving.
We've come a long way, Josh.
Oh,
we have come a long way.
So much more professional.
Mm-hmm.
We typically actually I consider I usually think about what I'm wearing on this day and try not to wear too much flannel.
Right.
Of course, today I didn't.
Today I didn't.
Well,
it is in the 60s here, so for us in Southern California, that's cold.
True.
If we're gonna wear flannel, it's probably gonna be when it's in the 60s.
Oh yeah, that's freezing here.
So it is. For those of you in Colorado right now where it's snowing or somewhere on the East Coast,
we apologize for that.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, right. I know. So, it is a good day. Today is we're the first Wednesday of the month.
In
fact, it's the very first.
What does that mean?
Of the month. That means that tonight is the second of the month. By the way,
yeah,
February 2nd. I
said it on Sunday too. I said, hey. First Wednesday is going to sneak up on us. It's the first day of the month.
First day, yep.
People were like,
nope. And so it is the second. It is February 2nd when we're recording this. And today is our prayer night, the first Wednesday prayer. And we're going to have a great time tonight. And so if you're listening live or catch us before 6:30 on Wednesday night, come on out and join us. This is going to be a sweet time of praying together.
Yeah, we'd love to see you out there. It's, Jesus said, my house shall be a house of prayer. We just read that.
We did.
In our devotional reading the other day. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things, Josh, and I wrote this in my little response time, was that's set in Jesus doesn't just sort of out of the blue say, I really want my house to be a house of prayer. Mm-hmm. He actually says that in response to the people who are selling animals at a marked up cost that are said to be more pure and holy so that they can be sacrificed in the temple. So they're taking advantage of people that want to worship. And so in contrast to religious abuse, Jesus says, no, my house shall be a house of prayer.
Yeah.
And gosh, I just loved that contrast of Jesus saying, I want genuine relationship with people without any walls or barriers. And you're putting barriers and taking advantage of people that want to come and worship me. And I'm not okay with it.
Yeah.
And then he flips over some tables. So
that's right.
Anyway, the context of it stood out again to me as we read through Matthew.
Yeah. In fact, on Wednesday nights, on the second and fourth Wednesday night, we do a number of groups and things around campus, but one of them is Alpha. And in Alpha is discussions about big questions, but it's a safe place to ask questions. And prayer is one of the ones we get into eventually. But already there were some guys asking about this prayer night and what it is, and they were asking, like, do I have to do anything? Like, is it going to be weird? And I'm hoping they show up, because they're kind of new at this and trying to figure out what all this Christianity thing is, and I really hope that they come and just experience prayer in the church.
Yes,
it'll be really cool. So
I love that.
One of my favorite nights in Alpha is talking about prayer for the first time, and then inviting these new believers, sometimes even not fully believers yet, to actually open up and pray, and to hear them talk to God in a sense, almost maybe for the first time, at least publicly. It's powerful.
There's a sense of, there's something refreshing about people that don't know how to play the game.
Totally.
It's just genuine, authentic, and no pretense. It's just sort of out there, right?
Yep.
And then afterwards, like, did I do that okay?
Yes. Yes. Oh goodness. This is what I love about Alpha. We're doing it at our church right now, in our cafe, and one of the most refreshing things about this is that in the midst of like a great point, somebody's like really asking a good question, or they're like sharing something really meaningful, they'll just drop cuss words, and you just go, oh, it's just. I love it not because of the cuss words, obviously, but because it's just so raw.
The right people are there.
It's exactly it. Yeah. They're just speaking from their heart. They're opening up, and then they'll say it a few times, and then be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," like as if to say, like, "Don't tell God."
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You're not going to tell on me, are you? No.
That's great.
I just that really makes my day, because it just feels like they're the right people. The right people to be there. So anyway,
so cool.
Little tangent about Alpha, and a number of things going on the 2nd and 4th. So you're always welcome anytime on Wednesday nights. In fact, we're going to preview tonight a little of what we're going to do in 2 weeks.
Right on. Yes, we are.
Okay, so let's. It actually relates very much to this message. So last week's message, and so hopefully you've heard that already. If not, you can pause now or pause later and go back and listen. We're going to try to kind of fill in some gaps and talk a little bit about the foolish fulcrum.
The foolish fulcrum. I love alliteration. It's count guilty as charged.
Yeah. You didn't do the fulcrum piece too much.
No, I try not to overdo. I try not to overdo it.
Yeah.
But I thought about playing with the cross as the crux of Christianity.
Exactly.
Like that. It's become a common term.
Yeah, but one of the early points in this is that it was that the cross of Christ was what the message was about, as we'll get into some. But this is the most, and I don't know would you say the single most important event?
Yeah, I would say history? As a package deal, cross and resurrection would be the most, in my opinion, the most important event in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to do to try to draw that point out is I loved I did a study a while back, just try to figure out how much of the Gospels is the last week of Jesus's life.
Yes, I love this.
And so Jesus lived 1,716 weeks.
Okay.
And so if you were to take 1 week,
plus or minus,
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. That, I mean, assuming you lived 33 years.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Totally. 1 week would have been 0.06% of his life, and yet it's over a third of the Gospels, which is pretty shocking.
Yeah.
So in Mark's Gospel, that the transition from life pre the last week, Holy Week of Jesus's life, it's almost a 50-50 split.
Yes.
Like he really transitions in Mark chapter 8 to go towards the cross. And so it's a fascinating amount of material that we have on the cross compared to, say, what we know of Jesus's teenage years, right?
Yeah,
so
one passage
from the age of like 12 to 30.
Yes.
we've got almost nothing.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, a few little verses.
Yeah.
And even in comparison, I mean, his birth stories. There's 2 books.
2 books.
Have a little bit.
Yeah.
Luke has maybe a little bit more. No.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's John starts with cosmic right in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
And but doesn't mention a whole lot about his birth other than the word became flesh.
Yep.
That's John's birth narrative.
And Mark kind of just ignores it.
Mark's like, hey, let's start with John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Let's just get into this already.
Yeah.
He's like, immediately.
I know.
Immediately.
Mark must have had less paper to deal with or something.
Yeah.
I always wonder how they did that. Like,
or Peter's like, Mark, that stuff's not all that important. Let's get to the story.
Let's get to the
right?
Story.
Yeah.
And you're right, because he does get to he gets to the cross right there and
very quickly.
Much. Like,
yes.
In fact, Peter starts saying, you're not going to go to the cross right after his recognition of who he is.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true. That's the transition.
So
but that much about the cross in our Gospels, and that's, we talk about the cross a good amount.
Yeah.
A lot, but the point is that this was of huge importance to the writers of the gospel writers, but it's also the main topic of discussion in Paul.
Correct.
I mean, anything else,
especially in these first few chapters of 1 Corinthians, and then other places as well. But my goodness, he keeps circling back to this theme, right? And it's not by accident. I think what he's laying the groundwork for is really challenging discussions that they're going to have about pragmatics. Like, how do we live out the gospel in marriage? How do we deal with people with differing spiritual gifts? And what do we do with the fact that culture is moving in a certain direction and the church doesn't seem to be being led in that same direction? Yeah. And I think what he's doing in talking about the cross is laying a foundation that's necessary because of the controversial things he's going to have to push into later on in the book. Or the letter. So I think there's this strong foundation being laid because there's conversations that he's going to have that are going to be really hard.
And so that's a great point, though, that the cross to Paul, that means, is more than just the thing that like saves us, in a sense.
Yeah.
It's definitely not less than that. I mean, it is definitely that.
Yeah.
But it's more than that, right?
Yes.
You're kind of getting at that
absolutely
bit in this message. Let's, before we kind of give the spoilers, I just want to point out that the Broncos' first Super Bowl is not on the list.
Dang it.
Declaration of Independence and Broncos. That was a funny joke.
I have to try to honor I try to honor the season, right? So football season coming. It was actually coming up on the anniversary of the Broncos winning the Super Bowl.
Okay,
so they won it on it January 25th?
I forgot to celebrate this year.
I didn't.
I'm just doing
That's funny.
Yeah. So kind of walk us through a little bit about
one of the things that I think we have to try to wrestle with anytime we talk about the cross is and this is good practice regardless of the subject, but I think it's challenging because of the cross. Crosses are ubiquitous in our culture. They're everywhere. You walk around our campus, you can see crosses. You see them even in the secular world as jewelry and etc. And I think we just have to name that never would have been the case in first century Corinth or anywhere else for that matter. The cross was really viewed as a shameful thing. One of the things I didn't have time to get into, and I had it in my notes in one draft and had to go, I just don't have time, is the way that the Jewish people viewed the cross. And primarily because of Deuteronomy chapter 21. And then it's quoted by Paul in Galatians chapter 3, cursed is anyone that's hung on a tree. And the Jewish people would have thought the strongest curse of God would have been through crucifixion. And so there was this distancing by the Jewish people from the cross because they felt like this is a symbol of God's curse on somebody. The Greeks would have distanced themselves from specifically a crucified Christ because that doesn't make any sense. And they were all about sense, right? They
Yeah.
were all about rationale. And does this argument make sense? And to have a omniscient, omnipotent creator God who suffers and dies, the logic of that, you can never logically connect those dots.
Yeah.
And so I think what Paul wants to do is he wants people to come at the cross from a different direction, because if you come at it from the direction of wisdom or power, you never get there, at least with a worldly perspective. And so he's calling the church to base their convictions on an event that did happen, rather than on this power, wisdom, as we typically see it.
Yeah. It's more than just a spiritual experience.
Yes.
Which is ineffable, right? It's like you can't really point to it. But that's a big deal, because there's religions today that actually honor Jesus in a sense. So Islam is one that they actually do honor Jesus as a prophet, and he's one of their highest prophets, right? He did miracles and things like that, but they cannot bring themselves to say that he died. No matter what the means of it, right?
Right.
In fact, sometimes they say that, no, like some argue that no, it wasn't him that died, but it was Judas and it looked like him, or something like that.
Yes.
Or that basically they're saying our scriptures have been corrupted to show that he died, which why would you do that?
Right.
That makes no sense.
Yep.
And yet that's it's so ingrained that a prophet doesn't, or God himself does not.
No way.
That. There's just no way. No.
Yeah. Certainly not God himself to come incarnate and die. And that's a great example.
Yeah.
Gosh, I wish I would have included that. It's
really good. There's still more of an honor shame society.
Yep.
Not all Muslims, but a lot of the Middle East is still that similar society where you wouldn't bring shame on yourself, right? Like you're saying. And so the fact that Jesus does that, and then they see that and can turn it around into something that now we say is beautiful, right? Like you said, now crosses are jewelry,
right? And
they're beautiful.
It's hard to imagine something else in history that's been viewed so negatively, to then be viewed in the same to the same degree so positively.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't think of anything.
That's a plot twist. I can remember Andy Stanley giving this talk one time, and he's just a brilliant communicator. And he tells this whole story about this group of people from, roughly 400 or 500 in Rome, where they're looking at a cross that's hanging in the Roman Colosseum. Right. And how they time travel back to these early disciples sitting around a fire and try to convince them that in 500 years, there's going to be a cross hanging in the Roman Colosseum.
Yes.
Have you heard that talk?
Yes.
And he just painted this brilliant picture of, but what it drew out was the absurdity to those early believers for them to think that the cross would be transitioned so much that it would be hanging there as a piece of a decoration, rather than a torture device, because of what Jesus did on it.
Yes, I love that, because the Colosseum would have been there in its heyday. It would have been this huge, massive structure. I'm sure Paul saw, and was like, he had to be in awe of this massive. And
oftentimes
structure.
Christians would be thrown in there to be torn apart by wild animals, right?
Yes.
And so to then see a cross hanging there was a symbol of transformation.
Yep, absolutely.
So
that is a powerful statement, because this terrible, horrible, awful thing happened to Jesus, and yet it's been turned around. So much so that, we say things like, we celebrate Good Friday.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, when you think about it, it's like, it's not always that good. I mean,
It's good for us.
Yes, exactly. I've always thought it like good for us Friday.
Yeah.
Not so good for Jesus Friday.
Right.
And yet it was for the good that he did it. All these things, right?
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
So there's certainly this shift that goes on. And so my thesis is this is the most important event that's ever happened in the history of the world. And, I think for us to wrestle with that again and have to come to terms with what do we do with the cross? And do we appreciate the cross or are we willing to emulate the cross? And I think that there's some in Paul where he wants to say, yes, we believe the cross happened, but we don't believe that it's the wisdom of God to be appreciated, but wisdom is designed to be lived.
To be lived, yes. I love that. What was your definition of wisdom? Was
living in a way that aligns with reality.
Aligns with reality. Okay.
Yeah, wisdom has to do with reality. It has to do with how we live in light of the world as it truly is.
Okay.
So it's doing the right thing in a situation.
Yeah.
That's wisdom, right?
You said this line, that the cross confronts our ideas, this idea at least, about the way we think the world should work, how God should operate, and how victory should be won. In other words, the cross shows us the way God wins, right? And in a sense, it's showing us how we should win.
Yeah.
That it's a different kind of winning, though.
It is, but Jesus would say it's saving your life.
Okay.
So I'd say that's winning.
Yeah, I that absolutely is.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. Talk about that a little bit more, though. What would you say that looks like in in a regular day-to-day life, in a family life, maybe at work?
Yeah.
So
for me, it was a realization to take up my cross is to live in a way of sacrificial love. It's not just self-defeating, it's self-giving. So I think that's a big deal because a lot of people think, oh, I've got to take out my cross. That means I've got to die to myself, which it certainly means that. But there's an aspect of the cross that is passionately, ruthlessly for the good of the other.
Yes.
Right. And you're willing to take on a certain amount of weight and suffering for the other. And I think that's what it looks like. I think on a day-to-day basis, I think some ways people take up their cross are by saying, I'm willing to not have to defend myself here. I'm willing to do what's best for you, even if it's painful for me. I'm willing to lay down some of my rights so that you might be able to flourish.
Yeah, I like that.
And because this is what Jesus does, right? He empties himself. He surrenders everything that he's due in order that we might find true life.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a number of ways that we can do that. And one of the things that I said in the message, and for me, this was like one of those aha moments, right? Because we are surrounded by crosses, and the cross doesn't have the same absurdity and offense that it once did until we consider taking up our own cross. And then I would argue, then and maybe only then, it's just as crazy as it was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And we feel the visceral weight of the absurdity of the cross when we are called to take up our own. And we go, well, I don't want to die to myself. This is what I'm due. This is what's right. These are my rights. Yeah.
And so let me just ask this. So that's a literal understanding of that in some sense, right? I mean, because I think maybe not intentionally or purposely, but people tend to spiritualize that.
Yes.
To take up my cross.
Yeah.
As if that meant maybe it's just to believe. Or maybe it's just to admit my wrong or something like that. But two things. You're taking that literally, which
I think
sounds like it should.
I think the original readers would have certainly read it first literally, and I would mean literally. Like they might have to take up their cross.
Yes.
I think for us to read it literally, it would mean we need to die to ourself.
Yeah.
We need to die to some of our dreams, probably some of our rights, you name it.
Totally.
I think that's what it means for us.
Yeah. So because and it's not just a one and done type thing.
Correct.
Right? Like I took up my cross.
Yeah.
So I'm good now.
Yes.
Right? Which I think that's pretty that's all over the place in Christianity is I trusted Christ a long time ago, or it's all about that story back in the day. No, Beth, we're not twinning, but we kind of are. We kind of are.
We are.
Hi, hon.
We are.
But no, that idea, I think it can be really dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a thing that was done in the past.
Right. And it's not believe in Jesus's cross. That's not what Jesus says here. Now, do I think you should believe in Jesus' cross? Yes. 100%. I do. I think there's actually great power. The Spirit's power is demonstrated when people believe the cross. But I also think we're called to take up our own, right? And so it's believe it, yes, but emulate it.
Yeah.
Secondly.
Yeah.
So I think a few things stood out to me in this text, Josh, where one was Paul seems to be, in verse 21, I think he says that people did not know God through wisdom. And he's making this contrast between we do know God through the cross.
Yes.
We don't know God through wisdom. And I just thought, gosh, that's a loaded statement. Part of me just wanted to preach the whole sermon on how do we know God through the cross.
Yes.
And so I nerded out a little bit on that Greek word gnosko, and how do we look at that word? But I think what Paul means is the cross reveals God. It reveals God as he truly is. And it reveals the way that we know, not just intellectually, but relationally. The doorway we step through to have relationship with God is the cross.
Yes. Well, that word is worth geeking out on, right?
So good.
Right. And you probably didn't get to geek out as much as you'd like.
No, I mean, there was like that word is a huge word.
Yes.
One of the things about that word that I skipped this slide and I still don't know if I should have or not, but so this is one of those, like, if you're ever in a Bible trivia game and somebody asks you, where's the only time in the Bible that eternal life is defined?
Okay.
John chapter 17, verse 3.
Yeah.
And this is what John says. And he's quoting Jesus. And this is eternal life, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. This is eternal life, that they gnosko.
They gnosko God.
That they gnosko God and Jesus, whom you have sent. And what does Paul say? The way that we gnosko God is through the cross. Therefore, eternal life, the doorway through to eternal life, which is knowing God, is on Calvary's Hill. That's the closet door of Narnia, as it were, right? Like pull that back and enter into a whole new world.
Yeah. And that's good. That it's it's not just the way of learning wisdom, which Jesus teaches a lot of wisdom.
He does,
actually. And there's all sorts of traditions of wisdom that aren't necessarily all wrong in and of themselves, but the way is through the cross.
Yeah. I think my Devo came out today, but I said something to the effect of, the Bible in other places doesn't seem to be too down on wisdom, right? Like we've got a whole genre of not just a book. I think I said a book, but we've got a genre of literature in the scriptures called wisdom literature, right?
There's a bunch of books.
There's a bunch of books on it. And then Paul's going, wisdom. And my one of my points was, he's not really saying, but he is saying that if you want to know what God is like, that's not the starting point.
Yeah, maybe even the way he says, if you want to follow me, you have to hate your family, right? Because I don't think he's really saying go out and actually hate your family.
Depends on your family. Just kidding. Just kidding. We can edit that.
But in comparison, in a sense, like to how much you value it's the cross, that wisdom is just
I like that.
way different.
And
this idea of no now, and I'm so there's Hebrew ideas and then Greek ideas of no, and sometimes you can kind of tease out some overlap there. And the tricky part is with that is that a lot of what we know about the Greek language comes from classical Greek, but you just gotta, you gotta recognize these guys writing, they may be writing in Greek, but they're thinking like a good Hebrew, right? So,
and they're probably speaking in Aramaic, a lot of them.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, very
that's
similar.
A whole nother story.
But that idea of knowing in the Hebrew is a very like full body knowing in a sense, right? It takes everything. So it's not just head knowledge.
Right.
I remember my Hebrew professor telling me this, that and explaining it this way, and I thought this was super helpful. She said that if you were speeding and a cop pulled you over and said, did you know that you were speeding? Okay, like, the typical question, did you know you're speeding? You couldn't say no in Hebrew. It's just not like, that's not the way, or you couldn't say, no, I didn't know I was speeding. It's just not like the concept, because I know I was speeding because I was speeding. It has nothing to do with my intellectual belief. It was what happened. So it's very much actually in line with reality. In a sense. Yeah. It's interesting that it overlaps in a sense, but yeah, that is this is the old, that Adam knew Eve, right?
And they had babies.
Because of it, right? I don't know. We'll stop that analogy right there. But that's cool. That's really cool. Okay, so we know.
Can we mention really quick?
Sure.
Surprising that we didn't already, but there was an earthquake.
Oh, I know. Okay, so I'd
almost forgotten about that.
I know.
That was something.
That was the 29th? No.
That was the 26th. January 26th.
Right? No. This is the second.
Oh yeah, no. It was
29th. It was the 30th. It was the 30th. I'm thinking what?
Oh, God.
So it's January 30th and 2022, and you could look it up in Valley Center, California, 4.3. I heard, yeah. At 9:35, somewhere in there, 9:45, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in between 0.2 and 3.
The earth shook. That was awesome.
Big time.
I know. And while preaching, that's the first time I've even seen that before.
I joked with somebody and said, I missed the seminary class where they taught you what to do when there's an earthquake while you're preaching. So anyway, that was something else.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So I was over hosting a service in the chapel, and it hit, and everybody's freaking out. And so in the chapel, this is once again behind the scenes info. Nobody really realizes this, but we are live in the chapel. I'm quote unquote live. Mm-hmm. But it's about a 2 to 4 minute delay depending on our worship sets and how they match up. Okay, this time it was about a 2 minute delay, and it happens, and there were people who are thinking, that didn't even faze Ryan. How did he do that? And he just kept preaching. He kept going.
Oh,
and so I got him and said, don't worry, it'll hit him in just a minute. It's on a delay. And then everybody cracked up. The only bummer is those 2 minutes were kind of lost.
Yeah, there's wow.
So we missed maybe 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That I kind of was.
Oh man,
not able to pay attention.
That was crazy.
That was I thought you handled it great. It was very composed. It'll be, as much as you can be for an earthquake while preaching. But it was great to stop and pray. So that's what you do.
Lord, please let the roof hold up.
Seminary students just stop and pray.
Just stop and pray.
Yeah, that's
good.
It's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey.
Most things in life. Stop and pray.
Oh man,
so
that's craziness.
Are we talking about that because that's where we are?
Yeah. I don't know the exact spot where that happened, but it's somewhere around there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
it's somewhere around there.
I heard on Sunday night you mentioned something about that time when.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned at the beginning. I said, you guys,
Yep.
I don't want to brag and I don't want to create false expectations, but this sermon at the 9 o'clock hour made the earth shake. So
we'll go with it was the sermon.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. Right.
You're a little disappointed when it didn't shake.
Yeah, yes. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So we have this idea of grace and the God who comes after us, right? That's how we know God is through the cross. And this is an invitation by grace to step into relationship with the living God, because he's purchased that through the cross. The second thing that Paul drew out was that the cross is the power of God. And that's a really interesting concept. I mean, power is the way that we get things done. Power is force, it's might, it's exerting and energy. And I think one of the interesting things that I sort of stumbled across, or just tried to tease out of the text, is that nobody would have doubted that the cross was power. Or that the cross was powerful. They just would have reversed who had the power, right? So the people crucifying had power, and the cross proved it.
Yep.
And yet Paul says the cross is the power of God, and he's not talking about the power of crucifying. He's talking about the power of being crucified and what happens because of that. And so I just love this sort of poetic way that if you ask somebody, is the cross powerful, they would have gone, absolutely, yes. And yet they would have been completely wrong in thinking who had that power and what it meant.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that the that there's a reversal of the power, right?
Yes.
So maybe the greatest power you can have over a human, in a sense, is to take away their not just their life, but their dignity, hanging them, if not naked, next to naked on a cross, right?
Right.
Beating them, torturing them, humiliating them for potentially days, as they die slowly, and painfully. That is a gratuitous, abuse of power.
Yeah.
Over any human being. And to take that and reverse it, and to make that the greatest illustration of the power of love is unreal.
It is unreal, and that's sort of and brilliant and beautiful, and that catches your heart. I think there's just so much about that I think we resonate with as human beings, and we go, yeah, that is the most powerful things in my life have been love, whether it's God's love or the love of others. And that seems to pass the test as far as, that aligns with the way that I've experienced the world also. And yet, if I had to choose whether I felt like the real power was in crucifying or being crucified, typically we'd go, well, come on, this is no debate. And yet the tables are turned here. And I think the invitation for Jesus followers is, will we believe that? Will we yield to this new subversive power?
Yeah. And that's interesting. Got me thinking that the power that the Romans had of the cross, right? The Roman power was not just in death, but there's a humiliation, putting someone in a place that they lose their dignity.
Right.
I wonder if that's kind of some of the calling.
It's
I don't know that God enjoys us being made fun of or anything like that, or mocked. That's not it. But to allow ourselves to be in a place where it's not all about us. We're not, we're humbled
Yeah.
Similar word to humiliated. In fact, that's what Carolyn's getting at here a little bit. She says, perhaps because the power of the cross is the way of humility. So taking up my cross daily is the same. Yeah. That's
so good.
That is. Yeah. Oh, wow. So, in fact, we have What's So Amazing About Grace is a good book to bring up.
I brought it up. I did not bring it with me.
You didn't bring it.
I'll find it.
Yeah, we can. But okay, so
such a good book.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I wanted to really quickly dive into what is the cross? How is the cross powerful? Right.
Yeah.
So pays a penalty for sin, atones for sin, justifies us, provides forgiveness, proves God's love, defeats our cosmic enemies of sin, death, and evil. And I wanted to say that's the power of the cross. That's the power. But living out the power of the cross, the challenge is, gosh, the cross goes right against our desire to be the ones crucifying.
Yes.
And calls us to be the ones who give ourselves through sacrificial love.
Yes. Now, you just said a lot there, that the cross is.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And what the cross does, right? Because and that's a big debate in a sense, right?
Huge.
Understanding what is so important about the cross. Like what's so, maybe that's a good book for Phil to write. What's so amazing about the cross?
There you go.
That's a big debate, right? I mean,
huge debate,
massive. So that's a big, it's a big theological debate. So maybe not one that you're going to see on a talk show all that often, although I would watch that talk show.
I would too.
So if you're listening, Hollywood executives,
let's do it.
I doubt that's going to happen.
But we're going to dip our toes in those waters.
Yes, we are.
We had a plan that we talked about actually on here for our Wednesday seminar. Our February third Wednesday seminar, February 16th. And we were going to do a Bible in the Hands of the People seminar that had a whole experience that will go along with it. But then February happened and we ran into a few things. Super Bowl, Valentine's Day, President's Day.
Yes.
That's the holy trifecta.
Good news, February. Though, we are going to do that seminar. That is going to be a great seminar. It's just going to be in March.
Right.
Same dates, but we ran into some things like the Super Bowl and realized that, on Super Bowl Sunday here, everybody comes to church earlier and doesn't come around 5 o'clock. So it would be pretty sparse.
It would
at 5 o'clock. And it's not that people are ditching church because, a lot of them will just show up early.
That's right.
And so we hope to see you there. Just kidding.
Yep.
And so we realized that. And then Valentine's Day.
Yep.
And then on the other end, there was President's Day. So when you do these things, you're thinking about them way out in advance of just the third Wednesday. And and so now we realize that it's hard to plan anything real big in February around that third Wednesday. And so now, not to say this is going to be a really big Wednesday, but it's just going to be Wednesday this time.
That's right.
And it's going to be a great Wednesday seminar. I'm really excited about it. So in place of the Bible in our hands, that's going to get pushed to March.
Right.
And in place of that, we're going to do a seminar that is about this very thing. In fact, I think it was the second word you used. That the cross atones for us. Okay?
Yes.
We're going to talk about theories of the atonement. All right. And that's a $5 theological word, right?
Right.
So you can have that one for free. You can throw that one around, the atonement. And you can sound really important.
You can
after the seminar.
After.
No, let's give a little bit of a taste of what that's going to be.
We've been talking about the cross for the last, it'll be, 2 weeks at least. But we haven't really defined explicitly what exactly happened on the cross. And that's what theories of atonement are trying to do. They're trying to unpack that. And there's no shortage of debate about the nuances of what happened on the cross. most people would agree that what happens on the cross is Jesus saves, right? That he provides salvation. He provides forgiveness. There's a lot of there. I think one of the things that we can do, Josh, is probably start with, what do all these theories agree on?
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and I think we could, when we craft the seminar, we could probably come up with a fairly decent list. But if we were to sort of walk through history, as we look at different points in history, different theories of atonement have been grabbed onto, celebrated more, lifted up in different time periods.
And those theories are kind of asking the question, how is it that what happened on the cross actually does save?
Correct.
Right? They believe it does.
Yep.
But each of the theories kind of explains that a little bit differently.
Yeah. And they each have biblical merit.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I will say is there's typically, every time period has had one theory of atonement that seems to have been elevated above the others. We can talk about which one is elevated in our day and time. But I'll just say that the first one that was elevated was called a moral theory of atonement. The second one elevated was called a ransom theory of atonement. The third one elevated was called a Christus Victor theory of atonement. The fourth one was a satisfaction theory of atonement. And then the fifth one that sort of grew to prominence during the Reformation is a penal substitutionary theory of atonement. And then there's been some subsequent other ones as well that I would say are sort of offshoots of some of the other five. Is there any others you would add to that sort of core?
No.
There's like a governmental theory.
Yeah, there's some of these
the Wesleyans would hold, but
the representationist. What's that one called? So there's a few of these that each of them nuance them. So for the average person, they're saying the same thing, because like that statement you just read, that you had said, you kind of put them all in that one statement.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, without thinking it through, I heard a lot of those different things.
Yep. I just sort of, what I actually did was sort of walked through different theories of atonement and said, Yep. Check. Did that. He did that.
Yes. Which is very much what the Bible does. Right. And that's why. So people studying this, theologians studying this, they're reading the same book, right? They're reading the Bible. They're sometimes interpreting it slightly different. But always they're emphasizing one of them over others, because you can't deny that all of them are at least represented by biblical authors.
Yeah. And I think a lot of Western theologians will say, well, we have to choose one atonement theory to see the others through, right? So
got it.
We have to have one that's sort of overarching, and that becomes the main theory of atonement, and every other one fits underneath that as like one of the sub arguments to make that main point. And I could say, yep, sure, that's one way of looking at it. Or like the rabbis used to talk about the scriptures being a gem that you would turn and look at from different angles and see a little bit different nuance in each. And I wonder if atonement theories function better like a gem than they do an umbrella.
That's what we should have called the seminar. Darn it.
The gem. Turn the gem.
Turn the gem of the cross.
Turn the gem.
That's multi-faceted cross. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we're calling it the wonderful cross.
The wonderful cross. Hey, I love it.
Maybe I'll put a diamond in the middle of the cross.
There you go.
I don't know.
I like that.
Huh.
Yep.
Yeah, and it gets at the idea that this, whatever we kind of theorize about what happens, it's everybody admit this is a wonderful, amazing thing that happened. It happened for us, and it is this that saves us.
Yeah.
And now a lot of these have tons of implications for the rest of theology, though.
Oh my goodness!
And
yes.
If you kind of overemphasize one, it can lead to some. I would say some, some errors in thinking in the other ways. So
yeah, and I would say all of them have sort of pop Christianity caricatures oftentimes attached to them that probably aren't entirely true, partially maybe, but overemphasized in one area. And so, one of the things that I think we'll be able to do in that seminar is give scriptural validity to each of these motifs of atonement, and to be able to give people the invitation to say, yes, I can see the validity of each of these, even if I decide this one is overarching and ought to be the umbrella.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That'll be interesting.
It'll be fun.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So let me set the stage with this. Anything cross related, really, is what we're going to be talking about a lot of it. And so if you have any questions that you want to ask, I want to give you a way to start doing that right now. Because I have opened up, hey, look, right here, there is a QR code. In fact, if you're listening online, everyone's online, but if you're listening to our podcast feed, the audio only, then you can go to slido.com and it'll ask you for a code. The code is 332233. And that is actually our code for all year long.
We own that.
We sort of own that, at least until I have to pay again next year. And this link will take you to the same spot every time, and so it'll allow us to continue asking questions.
Right on.
And for all of these as we go, we'll keep doing that. So if you're watching online, you can scan the little QR code right here and find your way to ask questions, and you can start them now. And the great thing about that is people can upvote your questions, and so it's always kind of fun to see your question get upvoted.
It is.
So try to ask the best question, because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes there's bad questions
and we won't answer them,
but there's not dumb questions.
You know what, Josh? Sometimes there's also bad answers, and guilty as charged.
yeah, that's very true.
Oh man,
it happens. But that's the crazy thing about this discussion is that throughout history, people have that. I mean, that would mean that if let's say there's 8-9 different theories of the atonement, right? If people held on to one of them and one of them only, they're answering a lot of bad questions. Right? Sorry, they're giving some bad answers. I mean,
Well, and maybe they're asking the wrong questions too.
And maybe they're answering. Yep, that's right. So start going.
So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
This is a sort of safe one because this isn't one of the atonement theories that people bleed over anymore. It was the ransom theory of atonement.
Yeah.
So the ransom theory of atonement fell out of vogue because people couldn't decide who was getting paid the ransom.
Yes. I know. Yeah. So because is God getting paid the ransom, or is it the devil?
Yes, right. Exactly. Who's getting paid off? And they're like, we all agree Jesus gave his life as a ransom for many. They just couldn't agree on who got paid off. They're like, never mind, we're moving on.
So
and they moved to Christus Victor, and they're like, who cares who got paid? The devil got defeated.
That's right.
Oh man,
I love it. Yeah.
Anyway,
which one took Jesus and asked for a ransom, right?
Right.
Which one took us? I mean, it took our sin, owned us in a sense.
That's some of the storyline that weaves its way throughout these. And to your point, maybe they were asking the wrong question. Maybe they weren't, right?
Yeah.
But some of these questions stirred up them not elevating one motif and elevating another in light of it. So anyway.
That's great.
That's so funny,
man. Okay, this is going to be a blast. It's going to be a little bit heady, but that's intentional. We're trying to give you, we're trying to give you, I don't know, what do we call this? We're not just trying to. This isn't just milk,
right?
Right. This is the meat and potatoes, right? I mean, this is going to be some real theology that we're going to be diving into, and I hope that it actually raises more questions.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's going to be fun. And I hope you do get to see the cross in some different angles than what you're used to.
Yeah.
And seeing how beautiful it is from those angles, and even how they complement each other when looking at them in different ways.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's going to be in two Wednesdays from now on February 16th. We'll be live in the chapel, and you'll also be able to watch live here. And so if you are away, if you are out of state or have to be at home, then you can join us, and you'll be able to ask live here. So we'd love to have you.
Love to.
All right. Well, let's see here.
Drum roll.
It is time, ladies and gentlemen, for our segment, Ryan Brought a Book.
So I had one of my more embarrassing moments preaching this last week.
Oh,
and it wasn't the earthquake.
No.
It was, I was at during second service. So I'd already given this message once, and I was telling a story from the book that I'm going to share about. But I said that there was a woman on a bus from Detroit to Michigan.
Yes. You hear that? From Detroit to Michigan. I'm going to be very honest with you. Didn't faze me. I was like, yeah, I got it. I'm with you.
First service, it didn't faze me either. And I'm looking out going, why am I getting the kind of response that I'm getting? I'm like, I feel like this story is a good story.
Yeah.
And so, you know how many people come up and talk to me after the service and say, hey, man, just so you're aware, you might be geographically challenged.
Yeah.
Detroit is actually in Michigan, you fool. Literally nobody did that. Nobody. Not one. So I told the story, and usually when I tell a story in a sermon, I try to get it in my head and my heart, and so I can just tell the story.
Yeah, without looking at
my
notes.
wires got crossed in this one, and I downloaded the story into my brain. She was on it. Jenny was on a bus from Detroit to Michigan.
Yes.
And nobody told me. And so I'm preaching the second service at a 10:45 service, and I'm into the story, and I'm telling the story, and all of a sudden it hits me. You fool. Detroit is in Michigan. And so I just stopped and I said, you guys, Detroit's in Michigan. And everybody started laughing, and they're like, yeah,
we know that. So did you, what is the destination in the story?
It was Traverse City, Michigan.
Okay. Right.
It was from Detroit to Traverse City, but
just that part.
My goodness.
It just
So I said afterwards, I'm not sure what shocked me more, the earthquake or the fact that Detroit is in fact in Michigan.
That's great.
Anyway, so which brings me to my next point.
Okay, and is that this book?
I read the story in this book called "What's So Amazing About Grace," and I don't know why, but every once in a while, during a certain year, I go on a kick reading certain authors. And towards the end of last year, I read Yancey's book, Where the Light Fell, that I talked about.
That's right. Yep.
And What's So Amazing About Grace. And I just sort of fell in love with his writing, and he's just such a great author. This one of my favorite sections talked about our resistance to grace. And it's just a brilliant section of the book. He's I think he has his finger on the pulse of both American Christianity and some of the ways that maybe we start to get it wrong. And this book, in my opinion, is a beautiful exposition of grace. A lot of stories and easy read, one that I think would be really encouraging for you if you're in the place where you're going, gosh, God, I just need a fresh touch of your grace and mercy.
Yes. Yeah. That was the second Yancey book I read.
Oh, really?
The first one was The Jesus I Never Knew.
Oh,
that. Yes. Oh my goodness. That was so helpful for me in a time that it was. Did we talk about this? That maybe this was in a podcast, or maybe another one I listened to, but that he was deconstructing in a sense.
Yeah.
Before it was cool.
Before
right?
it was cool.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we did say that. That and that's in a sense what he's doing about grace here. He's bringing it to light in a way that didn't. And this is written a long time ago.
Yeah.
And yet you feel like it still works.
Oh, totally.
It still works.
Totally.
Great. That's good to know.
Yeah. There's a few illustrations that, time stamps that you can tell it was written a while ago, but the stories are fresh.
Yeah.
And it was just so good.
That's
so good.
Great. That's great. So that is What's So Amazing About Grace by Philip Yancey. I agree. One of the great authors of our time.
Yes.
And so definitely worth a read. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for
Josh, thank you, man. It was fun as always.
Next week, we're going to have an interesting discussion. So
yeah,
we'll have to figure out what we're going to do because this Sunday is going to be a fun Sunday, right?
It is.
You want to set them up with a little who's preaching this Sunday?
Yeah. So Dennis Keating, the former pastor of Emmanuel Faith Community Church, is preaching this Sunday. And so excited. Your neighbor.
I know.
Sort of my neighbor too.
Yeah, right there.
Good friend, mentor, and just all around awesome guy. So we are really excited to welcome him back to Emmanuel Faith. And I think he's going to do an okay job.
Yeah. Of course he will. You guys come on out and say hi to him. It's going to be hard to keep the people away.
It will.
After service, right?
It will.
They're going to be flooded coming to say hi to him.
Yeah.
We may have to think about that. But anyway, that's going to be fun. So next week we'll have something that we'll be talking about, and because I don't know if we'll get Dennis here.
That would be fun.
It would be fun. Maybe we'll try.
Okay.
All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for trying to explore this, living in the way of Jesus with the heart of Jesus. That's what we want to do. And we appreciate you joining us for the journey. God bless everybody.
God bless. Nice shirt.
Thanks.